Alrighty, so in this video we're going to take that code that we wrote in the last set of videos and we are going to integrate it into our project. So this is not going to be fun. I don't actually have a step-by-step list of every single thing that needs to change. I have my reference code on the other monitor for how I integrated certain things, but I think what we're going to do in this video is I'm just going to go through the process and just go through every single individual error and show you guys how to fix that. So hopefully it'll cover whatever issues you guys might have while going to the deferred thing. So the first step is going to be actually importing the code that we wrote. So let me go ahead and actually maybe find that code somewhere on my hard drive, stalling for time, and there it is. And then over here, I'm going to dump it into BuzzMMO base infrastructure. And then I'm going to create well, I could create a new namespace here called Async. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that, I guess. We'll create a new namespace here called Async. Then I'm going to right-click and see, I have the folder open up right here, right? So you'd think I can go ahead and just take deferred and deferred1 and dump them over here, but I can't because I have my Visual Studio instance running as an administrator. I have that running as administrator because I'm using my local IIS for the web project. Now, if we weren't using IIS, or if you guys want to use IIS Express, you don't have to launch Visual Studio in in an administrative context, but since I am, it is launched in an administrative context, and I can't drag and drop files that way. So the easiest way to get these files imported would be to right-click on this folder that I just created, selecting Open Folder in File Explorer, and wait for that to pop up. Popped up here, of course it did. And then now that I have that new folder, all I have to do is take these files, right-click, drag over, and select copy here. Now, of course, we're not done quite yet because you'll notice that they have not appeared in our Solution Explorer. That's because they have not been added to the project. So we come up here to the Show All Files button on our Solution Explorer, select that, and now we see that all of the files on the file system appear in the Solution Explorer whether or not they're in the project. So now I can just control-click on both of these files, right-click, and select Include in Project. Now they're part of the project, and I can go back to hiding files that I don't want to look at. Now the next problem is, of course, going to be the namespace. Now, you could certainly come in here and type in, for the namespace, buzzmmo.base.infrastructure.async. You could do that, or if you have ReSharper installed, you can select the file or any of its parent folders, including the project itself or even the solution. But I'm just going to click on the folder here, Async, hit Control-Shift-R, and then select Adjust Namespaces. So once clicking on that, ReSharper will detect that the deferred of T does not follow the namespace conventions that I have set up. And I can just go ahead and hit Next, and that'll automatically update that namespace for me. I can verify that by opening up the file and noticing that BuzzMMO base infrastructure async is now the correct namespace. Now you see all the code compiles, so everybody's happy, and that's awesome. Okay. Oh, we didn't do when all, did we? We could do when all at some point later, I guess. Okay, so now for the fun part. What exactly is deferred going to do? I guess what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you guys how we're going to use it instead of IRPC method for interaction with the client, and then we'll go ahead and we'll implement it. So jumping back here into my components systems login system, you'll notice we do have an IRPC method, kind of just a random IRPC method that we put together for testing purposes. And I'm going to change that from IRPC method to deferred. So I'm going to type in DEF, hit Alt-Shift-Space, and let it auto-complete that out. The reason I did Alt-Shift-Space is because it will search namespaces. Now, a quick side note, if you're using ReSharper 10, you wouldn't need to do that Alt-Shift-Space. That being said, I prefer turning the feature off when the default autocomplete searches every single namespace for a class. I turn that off for performance reasons. When I want to search for a class that might be in a different namespace that hasn't been imported yet, I'll hit Alt-Shift-Space. If I don't want to, I'll just start typing, and that drastically improves the performance. Anyway, we can clear out those namespaces up there too. So that's what basically it's going to change to. All our IRPC methods are going to turn into deferreds. So let's go ahead and hit F6 to build that. And now, of course, we'll run into a problem right off the bat. So the first thing... well, never mind. So we're not going to be able to see quite how this is going to work on the client and the server yet, because we've already ran into a cascade of issues that are going to prevent us from compiling. Again, like I said, here be dragons. We have a lot of stuff to change throughout the code base to get this to work. So let's start off with the best way to give ourselves a nice roadmap of what exactly we're going to have to change in order for this refactor to work. So this is a beautiful thing about compiled languages. When you want to do a major refactor, all you have to do is change something around and then hit the build button, and you'll get a nice to-do list in the form of your error window. And it's a big improvement over weakly typed languages or dynamically typed languages, in my opinion, because it makes these sort of refactors a lot easier. So, to create that cascade of errors in our error window that we're going to be addressing one by one, the way in which we're going to do that is locating our old classes and interfaces that we no longer need and deleting them. So under BuzzMMO base infrastructure, we're going to go ahead and locate deferred RPC method of 1. Those are going away. We're going to locate IRPC method and IRPC method of 1. Those are going away. What else is going away? RPC result and RPC result of 1 is going away. Was there anything else that we needed to nuke? I can't really remember. I don't think so. Oh, in-process RPC method. See, all of these classes that we had before are being replaced by the 2 class. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to do this. I think that'll do it. So let's go ahead and hit the delete key and hit enter. Of course, since we're all using version control here, we don't have to worry about accidentally breaking something. If we do break something, we can revert back in our version history. Now you see that ReSharper's handy little solution analysis tool is telling me there are 85 errors in 15 files. If I hit F6, we will see all of those errors listed out. So this is our roadmap. It's not going to be as terrifying. I don't know if it's going to be as terrifying as you think it's going to be, but either way, I guess let's get started. So there's primarily 3 areas that we need to fix. There's primarily 3 areas that the code that we wrote is going to be replaced with different code. That's going to be the code generator, the client, the client systems on the client, and then the client systems on the server, and then our tests. So there's the 4 things that we need to fix. Let's start off with our generator, because we won't even be able to build until we fix our generator. So jumping over here, I'm going to open up my not my tools or my task. Open up my tools. Go to my proxy generator. Go to my code generator. And we're going to have to fix this all up. Okay, first thing we're going to do here is we are going to add in a using statement for BuzzMMO base infrastructure sync. So remember up here on the generate component interfaces, the first thing we do is specify what namespaces are always going to be imported no matter what. And in this case, I'm going to say using BuzzMMO base infrastructure. I'll copy and paste that name to prevent a spelling mistake. .async. And then make sure to add that semicolon because this is, remember, actual C# code that we're writing. So now that we have that, the next thing I want to address is how our interceptors are going to work. Because if you recall, this generated code, in fact, I can show you an example of the generated code right here. If you recall, this generated code needs to pass information off into this interceptor, this iStatic proxy interceptor. So the iStatic proxy interceptor needs to be aware of our deferred. And in fact, the way that we're going to write this, it'll actually drastically simplify how our iStatic proxy interceptor is going to work. So I just went ahead and I put my keyboard cursor on that by clicking on it and then hit F12. And now what I'm going to do is update this stuff. So basically, we're going to have 2... I'm actually going to nuke all 3 of these. I'm nuking all 3 of these, and I'm going to rename them. I'm renaming them A, to simplify things, B, also so that I get a compiler error when this is used, so that we'll get another error for where this is used, so we know what other code we have to update. So I'm going to change it to void intercept method that takes the map method just like before, object arguments just like before, and that'll be our first overload. We'll have a second overload that'll take in a mapped method, object array arguments, but then it'll take in a deferred. Now it's going to take in just a normal deferred. Now if you recall, the deferred of t inherits from the normal deferred, so we don't have to worry about writing another intercept method that takes in the deferred of t, because this overload is going to handle both cases. So now with that out of the way, I'm going to move this off to the side so we can keep in mind what our iStatic proxy interceptor type is and what these methods look like as we go and update our code generator. So to update our code generator, primarily the first thing we got to do is on our, let's see here. On our generate method, we have to change, so this is generate class constructor. On our generate method, the code that's responsible for generating like this line right here or these two lines right here, we're going to have to change the return type from IRPC method to deferred. And so that's really simple to do because all we have to do is literally change from IRPC method to the word deferred. I'm going to copy and paste this. I generally, when I'm writing code in strings, I like to copy and paste things in instead of typing them in because I have a very, very bad tendency to have typos, and this will not give me any autocomplete. So I'm going to paste in deferred there, and I'm going to paste it in deferred there. So now we're returning a deferred blank or a deferred of t in both these cases. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and update this string.format to use C#6's new string interpolation feature. ReSharper will give me that option when all I have to do is click on it, hit Alt, Enter, and we're now using C#6's string interpolation. Again, we can do this anywhere in the project except for the project that Unity compiles, because string interpolation is not a .NET 4.6 feature, it's a C#6 feature that works on any version of .NET. Anyway, so now let's jump down. So we have that, so what's next? Next up, we get our parameters. That's fine, that's going to stay the same. Next up, we have our body. So at this point, our body is going to be these three methods. This one for void, this one for response, and this one for response with result. So our void is actually going to stay relatively the same. The only difference is instead of doing intercept void method, we're just going to say intercept method. And we're still going to pass in methods at index and a new object of the arguments. So now what we're going to do is, let's see here. We're going to take off this bit right here, this qualifier right here, because it's no longer, well, actually, let's go ahead and change the name of the method first. It's all going to be intercept method. Also, take off the return statement. We don't need that either. And because we don't have the return statement there, we can go ahead and remove this. Now, if I hit Alt Enter, what that does is it changes this from a placeholder of 1 to a placeholder of 0 and adds this in here. By the way, why aren't we using string interpolation here either? Oh yeah, because this is array, it's not going to recognize that. We could use string interpolation here if we wanted to. The way that we would do that is instead of saying writer.write then a string and then arguments, we would pass in the $sign here, and then we would replace the placeholders with the actual thing that have the placeholders. We're getting a funny bit of syntax right there. Oh, it's because we have to escape them? I don't have time to figure that out. I actually have not run into escaping curlies. That's actually interesting. We'll look into that later. So let's leave it without string interpolation. Funny thing though, if you do string interpolation here, in some circumstances, it won't turn into a string.format. If you're passing it into a method that understands string formats, it'll actually format the method call to call the appropriate textwriter.write, which is a cool little feature. Anyway, so yeah, now for this guy, for the void is done. We don't need to worry about void. But we do need to add one thing to this guy. Now remember, we're taking off the return statement here. Now the line of code that we need to write here on the response and response with is instantiating a new deferred. So I'm going to say textWriter.write Oh, my IntelliSense completely decided to stop working there. I'm going to say var def equals new deferred. And again, I'm going to copy and paste that to make sure I don't make any mistakes there with the spelling. And then I'm going to close that off and terminate it. So we're just going to instantiate a vanilla deferred here on with response. And then the response with result, we're going to instantiate a deferred, but it's going to have a placeholder right here, which is going to be the type. In this case, it's going to be method dot return type. Let's see. Or no, return type name is what it is. Also, these should be right lines, not rights. I am dumb. There you go, because we want that new line in between the two lines. So make sure you're formatting this all correctly. Now, remember, this for each loop is responsible for passing in all the arguments. However, when we're a response or a response with result, we also have to pass in the deferred that we just instantiated. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if method.returnType equals response. Oh, I don't even... See, I just updated to... that's annoying. I just updated to ReSharper 10, and this performance is really killing me. So we'll do if method return type is response or method.return. Seriously, ReSharper? There you go. Equals mapped method return. It's like I'm typing without IntelliSense right now. It's really frustrating. Response with result. Ugh. Anyway, so if the method return type is response or response with result, we'll do one thing. If it's not, we'll do what we previously did. So if it's void, we'll just terminate the statement. If it's not void, then what we're going to do is we're going to say text writer dot, now this is important, write line, and we're going to terminate the argument list, and then we're going to do a comma and say def, and then terminate the method invocation. So this will satisfy the final parameter to this intercept method. And it might be easier if I did this horizontally. So this code right here will satisfy the parameter right here. But we're still not done yet because we still have to return our deferred back to the caller. So to do that, we do text writer write line, and we simply say return def. And that's it. Now, in theory, this should be all we need. So let's go ahead and exit out of full screen. I'm going to right-click my buzzmmo.tools and say build to build out our tools. And that's because buzzmmo tools relies on buzzmmo base. Let's go ahead and well, we're not going to be able to see this work quite yet. Because we still have a dependency on buzzmmo base, which is something that I want to get rid of. I'm really sick of the buzzmmo tools having this dependency on buzzmmo base when it shouldn't, but I want to put that into its own video. I don't want to do that here. So let's just trust that these changes work. We'll be able to test them later down the road. Okay, so that's our code generator. That's our first big thing. Next thing is, let's actually see what buzzmmo base is even complaining about. So it's complaining about, it's only complaining about our generated file, which is really convenient for us because now we can just come in here and completely nuke this generated file, just delete it. Now I should be able to build just buzzmmo base, which I assume was successful. Oh, no, there was an error there. Okay, here we go. Let's sort these errors by project, and let's just do it one project at a time here. So buzzmmo base has 3 errors. It has the IRPC method cannot be found and IRPC method cannot be found. Now, fortunately, all we have to do here is replace it with deferred and deferred of, in this case, blank. Or an open type, rather. Now, I did use Alt-Shift-Space, so go ahead and add your using statement up there if you're not using ReSharper. So anyway, so the code that we just changed had to do with the mapped method. The mapped method has to know if we're returning something asynchronously, or if we're returning something synchronously, or if we're returning something asynchronously with the result. And we do that by detecting what its return type is, and since we replaced IRPC method with deferred, we have to do that here as well. So now if I right-click and select build, I'm now getting only one error. The command blah 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 failed because blah. Why did it fail? Easiest way to test this would be to go ahead and edit this out and get this... Actually, a quick and dirty way to do this. Go ahead and comment out that before build. Reload the project. Rebuild the project. Now rebuild tools. Tools successfully rebuilt. Now unload the project. This is really hacky. The reason we have to do this is because the nasty project hierarchy that I have set up here, that's going to be fixed in the future, but not today. So let's go ahead and reload this. Now let's build this one more time. And BuzzMMO base, we still exited with code 1. I don't like that I'm not seeing any errors from the actual tools. I wonder if my if I come in here and select set as startup project, I wonder if my BuzzMMO tools build failed. Oh, right, because it still depends on BuzzMMO base. Okay, let's edit BuzzMMO base. Let's take off this before build just temporarily so we can build BuzzMMO base, so that we can build BuzzMMO tools, so that we can debug BuzzMMO tools. And let's figure out what exactly is going on with that. So let's go ahead and get that reset. Hit F5. We should get an exception somewhere, hopefully. We do. Invalid operation exception. Method do something. It does not have a valid return type. I know what it is. The issue is... so you know how we just changed that thing? Well, hold on. Map return type void. Return type regex. Right, because we remember how we just did that thing where we changed the detection based from IRPC method to doing deferred? We have to do the same thing here on our return type regex. So I'll go ahead and type that in. Hopefully I didn't get the spelling wrong there. Let's hit F5. And it completed successfully. So remember, I can do this because in my debug of this, I have command line arguments specified. So every time I debug my BuzzMMO tools, it's basically doing the same thing that it would be doing if we were launching it from the before build task BuzzMMO base. Let's go ahead and find out if our BuzzMMO base code got generated properly. Now we did delete the previously generated file, so we will have to select show all files to get it back. But it doesn't look like it got printed out. So let's go ahead and back into our BuzzMMO base, unload it one more time. Again, these steps aren't really necessary for you guys, as long as you follow with the code that I'm writing. I just wanted to do things... I wanted to get our generator working first, before anything else. Is results set as never used? Oh, right, because I never wrote the loading or saving. Anyway, now let's look at our generated. We do have a generated file now. I selected show all files. Let's include it in our project because we're going to need that. And let's see if our generated file has any errors. And it does not have any errors. So now you see that, for example, on our iLogin system server, on a method that returns a deferred of int, the first thing we do is we instantiate the deferred. We tell the interceptor to intercept it, and then we return it. And it's as simple as that. Okay, next stop, client. So let's go ahead up here, and so our BuzzMMO client and our BuzzMMO client Unity are going to fail on the same lines because they're sharing the same files. So let's go ahead and fix these guys. Jumping in here into our proxy interceptor, we'll see that everything in our proxy interceptor is not working. Now, the file that I just opened is located under BuzzMMO client systems, and it's this little proxy interceptor guy all the way at the bottom of client systems, all the way down here, that's used to actually perform the proxy interceptions for when the client sends a message to the server. So we just need to go ahead and actually implement this interface properly in the way that we changed it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make things easy. I'm going to go ahead and up here, I'm going to hit Alt-Enter, and all that's going to do is it's going to generate these two stubs right here. So these two stubs up here, these actually make it so we implement this interface properly. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and delete all this code, because we don't need any of that. Now what's it complaining about? What does it want from me? I think that's resharper just being dumb. Anyway, so the intercept method of void is simply going to do operation writer dot invoke method, passing in method and arguments. Because in intercept a void method, we're basically just telling the server to do something and not expecting a response. But if we intercept a method with a deferred, I'm just going to say operation writer invoke method, but I'm going to do method arguments, and then I'm going to pass in deferred. So I'm actually going to create a new overloaded invoke method on our operation writer, so that our code remains, fairly simple. In fact, in theory, I could even make our IR operation writer be our proxy interceptor, but I kind of like the separation of concerns here, so I won't do that. So for system operations writer, let's jump into that guy. The first thing we're going to have to fix is the systems operation writer interface. So I'm going to click on that, hit F12, and you'll see we're now in BuzzMMO client systems, iSystems operation writer. So for this guy, what we're going to do is we're going to change the signature of this second invoke method to simply simply return a deferred, and we're going to call it deferred. And that's it. However, that will require that we go into our actual implementation of Systems Operation Writer and do the same thing. So jumping into Systems Operation Writer, I'm going to come down here to the invoke method, which is now invalid because we changed its signature in its interface. So I'm going to change this parameter to deferred of deferred. Then I'm going to hit Alt-Enter and import BuzzMMO base infrastructure async, which appeared at the top of the file. And for this guy, let's see what we want to do. What I'm going to do here is we already have a callback mechanism. So when we do our transport sender operation, we already have a method that, or a parameter that represents a callback. So I'm going to take advantage of that. So I'm going to break these out into their own lines for now. And then I'm going to create a, what are the parameters? Code and parameters method, or rather callback method. That won't work because we already have parameters defined. Let's just say code response. And this is simply going to do deferred dot load. Where's my load? I created a load stub, didn't I? Oh, my save and my load I commented out. Let's go ahead and uncomment those out. We'll return null for our save. What does save return a deferred? Oh, I know why save returns a deferred. Never mind. Okay, we'll keep these stubbed out for now. We'll implement them after we get done with our client. So in my systems operation writer, I'm going to say deferred load and then pass in response. And then for the serializer, of course, I'll just pass in our underscore serializer that we have. So basically the code reads like this. If we invoke a method on the server, we send the method we want to invoke. We send the arguments we want to invoke, and we set it an object that we want to be marked as complete when the server responds. And then what we do with our transport is we tell our transport, okay, send this operation with this operation code, with these parameters, and then when you're done, tell this deferred object that was passed in to load itself from the response. And what that'll do is that'll cause that deferred to fire off all its on fails and on successes and on alwayses. Alrighty, so the next thing I want to do is, because we're here, no, I'll do that later. Yeah, we'll do that later, just to keep things more simple. Okay, this parse response method is no longer at all required. So we can actually just completely delete this entire method and make it go away. See, I hope the code's getting a little simpler here with only having these two really short classes actually, and we get to do fun things like take out a bunch of code and rename method names to make them make more sense. But anyway, that's our system operation writer done. Let's hit F6 and see what other errors we have in our client. The answer to that question is none. So that means that our client is finished. or has been upgraded to use our deferred API. So now what I'm going to do is, like I said before, I'm going to jump into deferred, and I'm actually going to go ahead and implement the save and the load methods. So the save and load methods are really, really straightforward. They're very similar to those other methods that we had before, or that parse response method that I had before, but it's going to be a lot simpler. So the save method is going to return a deferred. So I'm going to say var def equals new deferred, and it's going to return that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and say on always. And then we're going to say save operation result with our, let's see, on always, save operation result. Well, actually what we want here is save operation result. No, we can just use this. That's fine. So save operation result, and we'll just pass in parameters. And serializer. In fact, this could be a one-liner. I'll just go ahead and do just that. Okay, now save operation result doesn't exist yet, and that's because it's going to be a virtual, another virtual method, or sorry, private method on or that protected method on our class. So let's go ahead and do that. Protected void save operation result. The reason why I'm breaking this out into two methods will become very apparent very shortly here. Byte of and object and parameters serializer. And what this guy's going to do is he's going to say parameters cast to byte. We're going to say operation parameter. I'm going to hit Alt Shift Space to get operation parameter imported in here. And we're going to say, what do we do here? Response is valid equals is valid. And then I'm going to say if error parameters cast a byte. I really can't type tonight, can I? Operation parameters, operation response errors. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-RR and replace errors with error. And then I'm going to say equals error. And I've been writing way too much JavaScript. It should say if error is not equal to null, not if error. Anyway, that's our save for our base deferred. Now we'll do our load. So load's going to do the same thing. Now, you'll notice on my save, I return a deferred, and I also do this on always here. This means that I can say save the result of this deferred to this dictionary whenever you're done. Doesn't matter if you're already done or if you're done in a million years. Either way, when you're done, finally perform the save operation. And then return a deferred. Well, that's why I had it on multiple lines, because we should do deferred set result true null. So then when we're done saving, then the deferred that we're returning will be set to complete. So basically on the server side, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like def save parameters serializer, and then it'll say on always def, and then we'll say something like peer send event. So basically we're going to say save the deferred to these parameters. When you're done, send it over the wire to the client. And that'll drastically simplify our code. All right, for load, we're going to follow the same basic premise here. I'm just going to say set result, and, well, let's think here. Actually, now thinking about this, we could just say simply, so we can say var is valid equals parameters at byte operation parameter. Oh, come on. Is valid. And then var or string error equals null if parameters, and I can say object error obj, and say if parameters try get value byte of operation parameter dot error, not errors, out error obj, that's a fun word to say. Error equals string error obj, and then set result is valid error. Also, we have to do a cast to bool here. Okay, so I do have to, so I have a string of error here, but then I have to extract that string as an object out of the dictionary because, of course, this is a dictionary and byte and object. All right, well, that took a little longer than I wanted it to, but now we have our save and load done for our basic deferred. Now we still need to do our save and load for our deferred with the result. So let's jump into infrastructure async deferred of 1, and let's put them side by side so we can kind of keep both implementations in mind as we write this. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. After we do our then, I'm going to hit Alt, Insert, and then select Overriding Members, and I'm going to select Save and Load. And then, so what I'm going to do here is for the save, I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here. For the save, I'm going to do something similar to this save. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste it. And then keep this at the bottom. And then I'm going to say if is result set. So if we set a result on this object at all, then we want to, in addition to save operation result, we want to also serialize our result. So I'm going to say var using var ms equals new memory stream. That had to be imported from system.io. Var bw equals new binary writer, passing in ms as its only parameter. Var, not bar. You can tell where my mind is at this late at Friday night. Then we'll do serializer, write object, bw, type of t return, because we have the type available to us. And then passing in value or result as our value. And then I'm going to say parameters byte operation parameter dot result bytes equals ms.toArray. And that's our save. So basically we do the same thing as we did in our previous save, except in addition to setting the operation result, we're writing in our value. And now we have to do the opposite of it in load. So in load, actually, to make this easy, I'm just going to copy and paste this code. I'm not even going to bother basing it off of the existence of this, because I only want to call set result once here. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and then I'm going to say var result equals type of t result. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say if parameters try get value. So I'll do object result bytes array. Result bytes object, or how about result bytes obj, and I'll do try get value operation parameter of what am I looking for? Bytes, result bytes, and then pass in out result bytes obj, and then I'll say var result bytes equals cast to byte array result bytes obj. And now I can go ahead and deserialize the result. So to deserialize the result, we simply do the opposite of what we did up here. So I'm going to say var, using var ms equals new memory stream. In fact, I don't even need result bytes. I can just take this expression right here and pass it directly into the constructor memory stream. And then I can use using var br equals new binary reader, which is obviously the opposite of binary writer, passing in the memory stream. And then I can go ahead and say set result, passing in is valid, error, and t result, which is going to be the result of serializer dot read object br type of t result, and then casting it to a t result. And there you go. So this is the case if we did get a result bytes. If we didn't get a result bytes, then we simply say set result, passing in is valid and error. And that's it. that's how we'll load our thing. So what's really cool about this is now our loading and saving of our operation results is happening at the deferred object level, which is shared between the client and the server. It's not something that's happening in very specific locations in our client and server code. Which reminds me, there may or may not be something more in the client that we need to deal with. Anyway, let's scroll up real fast for this. If you guys want to take a look at these two methods, pretty straightforward. And then these are the corresponding methods on the base type that we added. And that's that. So now we have that implemented. I do want to go ahead and take a quick look at the other client code to make sure I'm not missing anything. So in our client code, on our systems event reader, I think we'll have a problem here. So invoke method on system event, we get our that's not what I want. I want the systems operation writer, or do I want the transport? I always apparently forgetting a lot about how this was implemented. But if I did my job right, it should be fairly easy to track down what I'm looking for. In this case, I'm looking for the Photon client transport on operation response, passes handle system callback operation code, operation response operation code. So that should be in our systems event reader, which is where I was before. And oh, that's handle system callback. I'm stupid. Okay, so method invoke ID equals system invoke ID, and then the callback is callbacks get callback a method invoke ID, then we invoke the callback. Actually, no, we don't need to change any of that code. That'll be handled just fine. Oh, let's go ahead and change these string.formats real fast. And we can also change this to use the name of operator, which does the same thing, except for it's strongly typed. Anyway, I don't know why I thought there was a problem here. There's not. Our client should be done. So let's hit F6 and see what our errors look like. Okay, so now we have a bunch of errors in our tests and our BuzzMMO server and BuzzMMO server master. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need to implement, or rather re-implement, the what am I looking? What word am I looking for? The mirror object of what was on the client. The same thing, the client interface interceptor. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to delete these two methods entirely. Then I'm going to come up here and hit Alt-Enter to add in these two stubs here. I'm going to keep this intercept method of deferred as empty, as throw new, not implement an exception. The reason for this is currently our system does not allow the server to send an asynchronous response to the client. Now, that might be something I'll add in the future, but I'm not worrying about it right now. Then I'm going to take the code from intercept void method, cut it, and paste it right into the intercept method. And that's all we have to do for that. All right, let's go ahead and hit F6. Okay, next up, buzzmmo.server. In process RPC method could not be found. This is a big one. So the invoke method on system is actually going to need to be changed up quite a bit here, which is going to be fun. So this is in the client context. If you recall, the client context is responsible for the majority of the client interaction, or the interaction with the client. What I'm going to do is, since this needs to be changed so much, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the code up to here. No. Do I want to do that? Yes. No. Yes. Yes, I do. Okay. Delete all that code up to there. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the if method return type is void. I'm going to take away this result equals thing, and I'm going to move it down here for later. So after we get the system object, if the method returns void, which means it's not an asynchronous method, then I'm simply going to say method.invoke system object arguments and then return. So this is the most basic form of method. It's a method that doesn't return anything from the server. So we can just go ahead and fire it off and return. But what happens if it's an asynchronous result? Remember, our server system methods are now returning deferreds, not IRPC methods. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take that, I'm going to cut it, because we're going to use it later. I'm going to say deferred equals null. Then I'm going to say try, and then I'm going to say deferred equals cast to deferred method.invoke. Then I'm going to say catch RPC exception, which doesn't exist yet. We should probably write that really quickly. So remember, if a deferred method throws an RPC exception, that means that we want to pass the message of that exception back to the client. If any other exception happens, we want that exception to be not given back to the client, because that could contain implementation details of our actual code. So our RPC exceptions are specifically designed to send this information back to the client. But we need to go ahead and write an RPC exception class. So let's go ahead and jump up into our buzzmmo.base, open up our infrastructure namespace. I'm going to create a new class called RPC exception. He's going to be serializable, and he's going to inherit from exception. Then I'm going to create a constructor that overloads this guy, and I'm going to change message to operation error. So there'll only be... Oh, whoa, what did I just do? I hope I didn't break anything. Anyway, good. Okay. I hate this usage in comments and string literals thing. It freaks me out. I'm so used to it. I did manage to hit spacebar before I hit next, but no, I don't want to change any of these. So I hit spacebar really quickly, instinctively, which is what I always do, and I forgot to enable this. This should always be enabled in ReSharper, so you can undo and actually see exactly what it did if it did something that you didn't intend it to do. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure I didn't change error to operation error everywhere in my code, because that would be really weird. Okay, so this will be the only overload, which will require the person to actually type in a message. All right, now that we have that written, we can come down here to client context. You see this code now compiles because we now have an RPC exception method, or class rather. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, if it failed, deferred equals deferred.fail, passing in e.message as the error. Then I'm going to go ahead and rethrow... no, I don't want to rethrow the exception if it's an RPC exception, do I? Well, yes I do. Let's rethrow the error. And then I'll do catch all for E. And if any exception happens, deferred equals going to be, deferred is going to be equal to deferred.fail, passing in there was a fatal error. And then we'll rethrow. And then we're going to do a finally block. So basically, what's going on here is there are three cases that we're going to have our deferred. Either it's going to come directly from the method, or it's going to come from an RPC exception, or it's going to come from a general exception. Actually, I do want to go ahead and right here, I want to say if deferred equals null, then I want to throw a new invalid operation exception using string interpolation, of course, as always from this point forward. Method info.name on component method.component.type.name returned a null deferred. So let's go ahead and go full screen so you can see that. So basically, if the method returns a null deferred, then we throw an exception. When we throw the exception, it'll be caught here. The deferred will be replaced by there as a fatal error. It'll get rethrown. However, the cool thing is we're going to put a finally block right here. So no matter what exceptions get thrown, we're going to send the response back to the client. This ensures that in almost every circumstance, barring a network failure, the client will always receive a response from their asynchronous operation. So what does this code look like? Well, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to say response equals new dictionary of byte and object. Ooh, also I can show you guys the new dictionary initialization syntax, or rather, it's referred to as the indexer initialization syntax. So we open up a square bracket, we cast a byte, of course. We do operation parameter dot system invoke ID equals system invoke equals byte of request. What did I call that thing? Parameters. Of course I call it parameters. I'm going to change that to request in a second. That's a nasty name. Operation parameter system invoke. I don't like using parameters here as a name anymore. The reason for that is I'm using response here for this dictionary, but I want to make sure that these are the request parameters. In fact, I can make it more explicit by changing these to request parameters. And then coming down here and changing this to response parameters. So that makes it very clear which dictionary is responsible for what data. All right, then I'm going to say deferred.save. Remember the save method we just wrote? Response parameters, passing in our application.serializer for our serializer. Then I'm going to say on success. So when the save operation completes, basically, then what we're going to do is we're going to say transport.send operation response, operation code send system response, and then passing in our response parameters. Now, we're getting a warning here, a possible system null reference exception. How would I deal with this? I'm looking at the code and there's no way for deferred to ever be null. So I'm not going to worry about that error. Also, there's no reason for me to catch this particular exception, so I'm going to remove that qualifier there. But anyway, our code, again, is drastically simplified from what it was before. But there's the method. Let's go ahead and exit full screen. I'll just take this, I'll scroll it up slowly. And let's move on to the next error. So let's hit F6 and see what pops up next. So, next up, we have login system does not implement the interface system do something bool. That's because, of course, we changed RPC method event to deferred. So all we have to do here is say deferred event, and we can return a... So now the way to return, it's return deferred dot success, and then we pass in the result. So... Oh, wait a sec, we're throwing an error here, aren't we? So we can do fail of int that. And then for our success, now this is the old way we did success, but like I was saying before, a second ago, through the magic of type inference, we can say success, and we can just simply pass in invoke count. So we don't have to even supply the type name, because the type name, this is a generic method, is inferred by the parameter, or the argument we're filling that parameter with. So it already looks better there too. Okay, that's it. Now it's just our tests. So for our test, basically we just have to replace deferred with our IRPC method with deferred. So we can go ahead and do a quick current document, replace IRPC method with deferred, replace all. All right. Now we have test RPC response no longer needed to have these tests there. And that's it. So those are those tests. We won't be able to run them yet because the project won't compile. So now let's jump over here to the other errors we have. Let's just run the same process here. So replace this IRPC method with deferred and current document. Replace all 8 occurrences. Do we have any errors yet? Oh, we still have errors because we didn't import that type. Importing that type, do we still have errors? Yes. RPC result success is now deferred.success. RPC result fails, now deferred fail. RPC result of string, It's no longer like that. Instead, it's just deferred.success. Remember, we no longer need to pass in the type. And now we can say deferred, but we do have to pass in the type here. Because we're failing and we're not returning a result, we have to pass in an explicit type argument because it doesn't have any parameter to infer based off of. Okay, done was changed to on success. Fail was changed to on fail, and always was changed to on always. Scrolling down, done was changed on success, fail was changed on fail, always was changed on always. Operation errors is no longer operation errors, it's operation, or it's just error. So error is now going to be a string. We're going to take the S off, and we're going to assign it to null, or assign null to it. I always get that little thing in English mixed up. There we go. So that's just quickly refactoring the code right here to use different method names and also to use operation error instead of error instead of operation errors. So we need to do the same thing here. So we're going to change operation error. We're going to turn it into a string. We're going to say we're going to nuke the S. We're going to assign null to it. Then we're going to say operation error equals this error, and then we're going to say operation error should be equivalent to operation error. So build succeeded. So the next step is to run all our tests. This will make us actually, honestly, relatively confident that that refactoring worked properly. Which is the cool thing about tests. Okay, invoke deferred with result on server fails. Decided to take a really long time. Why did it fail? Did it just time out? It aborted. Okay, so we potentially just discovered a bug somewhere. Invoking deferred with result on server fails. So, client system equals test component to client proxy method with result false. On success count. Now, why would it just sit there though? I don't think there are any deadlocks in my code anywhere. Well, apparently there's a deadlock somewhere. One way to do this would be to, I'm just going to hit the debug button on my Test Explorer. I'm going to wait a second, and then I'm just going to hit pause. And we're going to see where we're deadlocked. And then Visual Studio is just going to sit here and do nothing about it for a couple seconds, because that's Visual Studio for you. Whoa, what are you? Still need to relearn or learn more about this diagnostic tools thing. What are events? I don't know what events are. I don't know. Am I really paused? No, it's frozen. There we go. Oh, a Stack Overflow exception happened. That's why. It happened because this on always is always calling itself. Now, that's obviously not a good thing here. So, now what's going on here? This on always is called when we want a deferred of T result callback. And we could just say based on always. In fact, that's, I think, what I probably intended to do in the first place. So, the on always in deferred of T that accepts an action of deferred of T result should invoke base.onAlways. Now let's run these. And a success, which is nice. Running everything results in success. So now we can be reasonably certain that everything is going to work in the way that we want it to. So let's see if it does. I have my server running. I don't think I lost my logging. I don't know how I lost my logging, but I did. However, we can definitely infer on our client to see if it'll work. However, our client needs work. So let's go ahead and open the C# project. Looks like they renamed that from Open Visual Studio to Open C# project. That's kind of neat. Let's give this a second. A lot of long-running tools. I mean, then again, my CPU isn't that fast. It's a first generation i7. Which it's what, 5 years old now? I think I literally bought this computer 5 years ago, as of like a week or two. That's sad. I'm sad now. I just closed my Solution Explorer. Why did I do that? Why did it pop up on my other monitor? I don't know the answers to these questions. All right, I'm just hitting F6 to see where the error is. Oh, same thing. It's on success, or on fail, or on always. On. Oh, what are you complaining about? This is just going to be operation, or this is just going to be error, res.error, and I don't need to do the string.join anymore, which simplifies things there. And we'll do the on always there. We'll hit F6, and we'll see build succeeded. So builds are succeeding, our tests are passing, so now let's hit play and see what happens. All right, we connected to the server, and when we hit succeed, we get nothing. So let's like pauses for a second, which is kind of weird. I wonder what it's doing. Oh, Stack Overflow. There's a Stack Overflow there. I didn't even see that. I was really confused for a second. Stack Overflow. Okay, so we're going to take this. We're going to Control-C that, and we're going to close this, and we're going to jump back here, and then we're going to hit Control-ET, which shows us our stack trace. So our stack trace happened right there. Oh, really? I'm wondering if the client Unity project never built. Just come in here and just edit a file and then hit F6. And let's come back to Unity. Okay, so it definitely is loading in a new version of these DLLs. So now let's hit run. I wonder if that's just this exact same error that we had before. It was. See? It's working. Alrighty, so this video was a lot longer than I expected to. Apologize for that. We're going to do a lot more fun stuff. I really want, there's a couple things that I want to get refactored out as well soon. We're going to work on logging. We're going to work more on continuous integration. We're going to get multiple instances of region servers running. But I really wanted to get that out of the way. It wasn't a whole lot of fun, but it's incredibly important. And I hope you guys appreciate how well this code simplifies by using fewer classes that are deferred and are deferred to T that actually make sense and had some thought behind them. As opposed to the way it was done before. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I suppose we will see you in the next